She declared me her husband. The Galactic contract made it official Galactic contract. Part 1. Ethan Hale had never imagined that his life would change forever while standing in a room full of alien dignitaries. The Galactic conquered, a council that ruled over countless star systems, was not the place where Earth's voice mattered much. Ethan had been sent simply to observe, to take notes, and to deliver the small gifts his government had deemed politically useful. He adjusted his suit nervously, feeling out of place among beings whose height, color, and form defied every rule he had learned about biology. The room hummed with tension. Every species had its own agenda, its own code of honor, and its own idea of what the galaxy should become. Ethan, a human, was the least of their concerns. He felt invisible, a tiny observer at the edges of a conversation that spanned light years and centuries. Yet, even from the corner of the Great Hall, he could sense the weight of every decision being made, decisions that could decide the fate of millions. Lady Veilrix entered like a storm. Her presence alone caused a ripple in the room. Towering and elegant, her iridescent skin reflected the chamber lights, and her eyes held the calm of someone who had seen wars and won them. She walked to the center with a grace that commanded respect, every step precise and deliberate. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Even the most arrogant dignitaries fell silent. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. He had read about Veilrix in reports, stories told in hushed tones about her strategic brilliance and her unmatched control over her people. Yet now, standing so close, the aura of her power was almost suffocating. Without warning, Veilrix raised her voice, clear and resonant, reaching every corner of the chamber. "By the covenant of binding claim, I declare Ethan Hale my husband. The contract is official and recognized by the laws of all signatory species." The room erupted. Gasps echoed through the hall. Aliens of every shape and color looked at each other in disbelief. Ethan froze. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He was human, not a diplomat, not a warrior, not someone prepared for a moment like this. And yet, according to every ancient law and protocol, he was now married to one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The elders of the conquered immediately stood, some hissing in confusion, others murmuring in rapid alien languages. They were trying to determine the legality of the declaration. Some consulted glowing tablets, while others gestured frantically at the central crystal that recorded all proceedings. Yet the contract was unbreakable. It was older than many civilizations in the room, older than most of the current members. And under its rules, Ethan had no choice but to accept it. Ethan's mind raced. Marriage, husband, what did that mean in this context? He had read about alien treaties and agreements, but never about a human being declared a spouse by law, recognized across the galaxy. He looked at Veilrix, expecting some smile or gesture of humor, but her face remained calm, almost neutral. She was not joking. A representative from the Zorath Empire, a species of crystalline beings, tried to object. "This is absurd. No human has the standing to hold such a contract." Veilrix turned her piercing gaze on him. "The covenant does not discriminate by species. It binds by choice and acknowledgement. He is my husband, and the law recognizes it." The room fell silent again. Aliens whispered among themselves, trying to reconcile centuries of precedent with the sudden elevation of a human envoy. Ethan could feel their eyes on him, assessing, doubting, wondering if humans had somehow slipped through a loophole they had not considered. Ethan swallowed hard. I accept," he said, the words tasting strange in his mouth. They felt both terrifying and strangely empowering. The entire room seemed to lean in, waiting for some sign of weakness, but Ethan forced himself to stand tall. If the galaxy now saw him as a consort to Veilrix, he could either cower or learn to wield the unexpected power he had been given. The council murmured, and a scribe began recording the declaration in the ancient language of the conquered. Legal marks glowed around Ethan and Veilrix, shimmering in the air like a cage that could not be broken. Protection, authority, and privileges now surrounded him, encoded into a contract that centuries of galactic law could not undo. He was untouchable, at least legally, though he knew that some would try to bend every rule to challenge him. After the initial shock, Ethan followed Veilrix as she walked to a private chamber. The corridor was quiet, lined with towering statues of past leaders, each a reminder of power earned and maintained. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, the expectations of a galaxy that had never given humans a moment of true influence. In the chamber, Veilrix finally spoke in a softer tone, one that only Ethan could hear. "I did not choose you for affection," she said, her eyes locking with his. "I chose you because humans are unpredictable. You think in ways we cannot anticipate. You break patterns we take for granted, and in this galaxy, unpredictability is power." Ethan tried to find words, but none came. He had expected a warrior to choose a human for companionship, perhaps for alliance, but not for this reason. It was a compliment, though wrapped in a recognition of the weight he now carried. Over the next few hours, Ethan learned the full implications of the declaration. The contract gave him access to restricted archives, strategic plans, and even the right to intervene in disputes under certain conditions. Earth's position, previously insignificant, now gained protection. Any act of aggression against humans could be considered an act against Veilrix herself, an offense that could trigger retaliation from her entire empire. He realized, almost with a mix of awe and fear, that humanity had suddenly become relevant. Not because of technology, not because of military might, but because of a legal construct no one had thought humans could navigate. Aliens who had dismissed humans as weak and adaptable now had to treat them with respect, or risk provoking a being whose wrath could be as much legal as physical. Despite the gravity of his new role, Ethan felt a spark of determination. He was human, and humans thrived in situations where rules were complex and unpredictable. He could not fight like a Veilrix, but he could think like a human. And sometimes, thinking differently was stronger than any weapon. Word of the declaration spread quickly throughout the chamber. Delegates whispered as they passed, trying to understand how a single human could gain such leverage. Plans shifted. Alliances wavered. Even enemies of Veilrix had to pause and reconsider their next moves. At night, Ethan stood on a balcony overlooking the city of the conquered. Stars stretched across the sky like a canvas, each one a reminder of how vast and dangerous the galaxy was. Yet for the first time, he felt a strange sense of purpose. He was no longer just a messenger or an observer. He was a participant. He was part of a game that spanned systems and centuries, and for the first time in his life, he felt that humans had the tools to play and to win. The following days were a whirlwind. Meetings, protocols, and briefings filled every hour. Ethan had to learn quickly alien languages, laws, and etiquette that had taken centuries for others to master. And yet, with each passing day, he discovered the power of human adaptability. Rules that seemed rigid were full of openings, precedents that could be interpreted in ways no alien had considered. With Veilrix as his partner, even a human mind could wield influence at a galactic scale. One evening, a representative from the Krylon Syndicate approached him with caution. "Your position, it is unprecedented. How does a human understand these laws so quickly?" Ethan smiled faintly. "We adapt, we observe, and sometimes we read the gaps that others ignore. That is enough to survive and even thrive." It became clear to the galaxy that Ethan was not a puppet, and Veilrix was not a simple tactician. Together, they formed a new dynamic, one that no one could predict. Diplomacy was no longer just negotiation. It was strategy intertwined with human creativity. And the galaxy, which had long dismissed humanity, was beginning to notice. At the end of the first week, Veilrix called Ethan to a strategic war room filled with holographic displays of systems and fleets. "The galaxy is heading toward conflict," she explained, "and we need someone who can think outside the bounds of traditional strategy." "That someone is you." Ethan looked at the maps, at the fleets, at the ancient codes and treaties projected in midair. The responsibility was enormous, but he felt the pulse of human ingenuity rising inside him. He was small, young, and untested, but humans had survived worse than cosmic empires and unbreakable contracts. And now, he would show the galaxy why humans should never be underestimated. Veilrix's voice broke his thoughts. "Tomorrow you will attend the first formal session as my husband and as a representative with authority. They will challenge you, they will doubt you, but you are prepared whether you realize it or not." Ethan nodded. He did not feel prepared, not really. But humans had a way of turning fear into action, confusion into clarity, and rules into advantage. And if the galaxy thought a single human could not influence the course of events, they were about to learn a lesson that would be remembered for centuries. As night fell over the city of the conquered, Ethan stood alone again on the balcony. The stars looked cold, distant, and endless. But he felt a spark that humans always carried, even when the odds seemed impossible. He was not just a witness anymore. He was a participant, a factor in a game that no one had expected him to play. And in that realization, he found courage. The galaxy had declared him insignificant, a human with no power, no influence, and no future in its councils. But in the quiet of the night, Ethan Hale understood that he was anything but insignificant. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not with force, but with unpredictability, ingenuity, and the unbreakable spirit of survival. And for the first time, he felt the weight and the thrill of that truth. Galactic Contract Part 2. The sun had barely risen over the crystalline towers of the Concord when Ethan Hale prepared for the next challenge of his unexpected role. The galaxy, still buzzing from the news of his binding to Lady Veilrix, was restless. Rumors had spread faster than light, and many factions were already planning how to test or manipulate this new, unpredictable human influence. Yet, Ethan felt no fear. He had spent the past days learning, observing, and understanding. Humans were masters of adaptability, and for the first time, that ability had real weight. As he walked to the assembly hall, he reflected on the lessons he had learned from Veilrix. Alien laws were precise and rigid, yet full of hidden loopholes. They had built civilizations around centuries-old precedents, but humans, with their flexible thinking and creative problem-solving, could find openings that no one else noticed. This knowledge was power. He felt it like a pulse within him, ready to turn uncertainty into advantage. The hall was immense, filled with delegates representing every corner of known space. Towers of crystal, halls of metal, and floating orbs gave the room a futuristic yet intimidating beauty. Beings of every shape and color moved about, discussing treaties, trade, and war. All of them turned to watch as Ethan, escorted by Veilrix herself, stepped onto the central dais. The moment was heavy, charged with both curiosity and suspicion. A towering representative from the Zorath Empire spoke first, his voice like grinding stone. This human, claimed as a consort, holds no experience or knowledge of our laws. How can he have any authority? Ethan straightened, recalling Veilrix's advice, confidence, clarity, and observation. Experience is valuable, he said, his voice calm, but understanding, creativity, and the ability to act when others hesitate are just as important. My role is not to replace your experience, but to navigate gaps that experience may overlook. A murmur ran through the assembly. Many delegates had never heard a human speak this way. There was something about the simplicity of his words, the quiet certainty in his tone that drew attention. They were expecting weakness, indecision, or fear. Instead, they saw confidence and focus. An elder from the Krylon Syndicate leaned forward. And what gaps would a human navigate that others cannot? Ethan gestured to the display of ancient treaties and territorial laws projected in midair. These laws are binding and complex. Many of you follow them rigidly, afraid of minor violations or misinterpretation. Humans see patterns differently. We find opportunities where others see only rules. Veilrix gave him a subtle nod, a sign that she trusted his instincts. This was more than a legal declaration, it was a test. If Ethan could convince the galaxy that humans were capable of meaningful influence, they would begin to treat humanity as a strategic partner rather than a negligible species. The next hours were intense. Delegates presented scenarios, challenged decisions, and attempted to trap Ethan in legal contradictions. Each time, he responded with calm logic, interpreting laws in ways that were precise yet unexpected. He drew from human reasoning, understanding both the letter and the spirit of the law. Slowly, the assembly realized that he was no ordinary participant. He was a wild card, unpredictable yet formidable. By midday, whispers had spread throughout the hall. Humans were no longer the insignificant observers. They were potential catalysts for change. Factions who had long underestimated humanity began reconsidering their strategies. Alliances shifted subtly as delegates noted Ethan's ability to influence outcomes without threat or force. During a break, Ethan and Veilrix walked along the corridors of the Concord. "You handled yourself well," she said, "but this is only the beginning. The galaxy is full of challenges, and some will test not only your understanding but your courage." Ethan nodded. He had expected danger, but he had not expected the thrill of influence. Humans were not built for passive observation. They thrived on action, on thinking one step ahead, and on turning chaos into advantage. He could feel the galaxy responding to his presence, shifting in ways that would soon reshape entire strategies. The afternoon session introduced a new challenge, a dispute over territorial claims between two powerful empires. Both sides cited centuries-old contracts and territorial rights, each claiming legal supremacy. The room was tense, representatives prepared for verbal battles that could escalate to armed conflict if mismanaged. Ethan observed quietly, listening to every argument. Then he spoke. Both sides are correct under different interpretations of the law. But there is a clause that has not been applied for generations. It allows a neutral party to suggest a mutually beneficial arrangement that preserves sovereignty while preventing conflict. The delegates looked at him in surprise. He continued, detailing a solution that honored both sides' claims while introducing a trade agreement that benefited all parties. The solution was elegant, simple, and within the bounds of the law. The room fell silent as they realized the brilliance of his reasoning. Conflict was avoided not by threat, not by negotiation alone, but by understanding and creativity. Veilrix's eyes shone with pride. She had chosen him because humans could navigate paradoxes, and now the proof was undeniable. The other delegates began to murmur, some in admiration, some in disbelief. The human at the center of the galaxy had just prevented a war using nothing but thought, logic, and perspective. The day ended with Ethan being summoned to Veilrix's personal council chamber. The walls were lined with holographic archives and strategic displays. "You are proving humans are more than we believed," she said. "But the galaxy is vast. Others will challenge you, and some will try to exploit your inexperience. Are you ready for what comes next?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I have to be. Humans survive by learning quickly and acting decisively. If the galaxy tests me, it will see that we do more than adapt. We lead when the moment requires it." Veilrix allowed a small smile, a rare sight. "Good. Tomorrow you will address the conquered directly, not as my consort, but as a human representative with authority. Every eye will be on you and every word will matter." That night, Ethan studied. He reviewed the laws, treaties, and precedents that govern the galaxy. He anticipated challenges and plotted responses, preparing not only for defense but for influence. Humans were not strong like Veilrix, nor long-lived like some of the elder species, but they had resilience, creativity, and ingenuity, the qualities that now made him a key player in galactic politics. When he returned to the assembly the next day, the energy in the room was different. Delegates no longer saw him as a minor figure. He was a factor, a wild card whose actions could shift balance and strategy. The session began with a discussion of trade rights, border disputes, and alliance obligations. Ethan listened, considered, and intervened at precise moments, using human reasoning to clarify points and offer solutions. Each intervention was subtle yet decisive, showing the value of his perspective. By afternoon, a critical moment arrived. An alliance of three empires attempted to challenge Veilrix's authority, arguing that a human could not hold legal influence over interstellar contracts. Ethan rose, voice steady. "The laws of the conquered recognize the covenant of binding claim. It does not specify species or prior status. Therefore, under the highest legal authority of the galaxy, my role is valid and binding. Attempts to circumvent this law are not only illegal, they destabilize the entire system." The chamber was stunned. Delegates whispered, checking the ancient records, and realized that he spoke correctly. Every argument they had planned to undermine him crumbled under the weight of law and logic. Ethan had turned challenge into triumph without raising a hand or threatening force. Humans, small and underestimated, had just reshaped strategy through intellect alone. Veilrix approached him later, her presence commanding yet calm. "You are doing more than survive. You are teaching the galaxy a lesson. Humans are adaptable, observant, and capable of influence they cannot yet measure. This is why I chose you." Ethan nodded. "We do not dominate with strength or age. We dominate with understanding, creativity, and the ability to act when others hesitate. That is enough to survive and to thrive." Over the following weeks, humanity's reputation began to shift. Other empires approached Earth not as a weak planet, but as a strategic partner. Alliances were formed, treaties honored, and conflicts avoided because even the most aggressive powers recognized the legal and intellectual advantage humans now represented. Ethan became a symbol of human ingenuity, a living testament to the species, adaptability, and resourcefulness. In private, Veilrix shared insights into impending galactic threats. War looms, and not all threats can be solved through law alone, she warned. But humans think differently. Where others see danger, you see options. That is why you are essential. Ethan accepted the responsibility. The galaxy was vast and its challenges immense, but humans had a history of facing overwhelming odds and surviving. And now, armed with law, creativity, and an unexpected position of power, humanity had the chance to influence not only survival, but destiny. The months that followed saw humans take an active role in galactic affairs. Trade disputes were resolved efficiently, potential wars diffused before they began, and strategic decisions benefited from a perspective no alien species could fully anticipate. Ethan, always observing and adapting, became a central figure, demonstrating that humans did not need to dominate physically. They could dominate through understanding and foresight. At the end of his first year as Veilrix's human consort, Ethan stood once again on the balcony of the Concord, looking at a galaxy that now regarded humans with respect, curiosity, and caution. The stars stretched endlessly, yet he felt a new connection, a sense of purpose and influence that had once seemed impossible. He knew the challenges were far from over. The galaxy would continue to test him, to push, to challenge, and to provoke. But humans were survivors. They adapted, learned, and turned disadvantages into strengths. And now, humanity had a place among the stars, not as bystanders, but as influencers, strategists, and unexpected champions. Ethan smiled quietly, feeling the weight of both responsibility and potential. The galaxy had changed, and humans had changed it, not through war or conquest, but through ingenuity, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that defined their species. And as the stars twinkled above, he understood that this was only the beginning of humanity's legacy in the vast expanse of space. Galactic Contract Part 3. Ethan Hale awoke to the soft hum of the Concord's energy fields, a sound that had become strangely comforting over the past year. Humans were now recognized across the galaxy as strategic allies, and he had grown accustomed to the weight of influence that his legal and intellectual standing provided. Yet, Ethan knew that the galaxy would not remain static. Power was always challenged, and every species with ambition would eventually test the limits of human ingenuity. The council chamber was already alive with activity as he entered. Holographic displays projected disputes over new trade routes, contested territories, and interstellar resource claims. Ethan had been given authority to mediate and influence without fear of personal reprisal, but he had learned that legal power alone was not enough. He needed understanding, creativity, and a deep awareness of the perspectives of others. A message arrived from the Vorath cluster, a coalition known for its aggressive expansion. They had begun to encroach on neutral systems, citing vague claims of historical ownership. The situation was delicate. A single misstep could ignite war. Ethan reviewed the treaties, considering every clause, precedent, and possible loophole. He realized that humans excelled precisely in this space. Where others saw rules as rigid, humans saw possibilities. When the Vorath delegates arrived, they expected confrontation. Their towering forms and armored exteriors were designed to intimidate. Ethan, standing with Veilrix at his side, did not flinch. He addressed them with calm authority. Your claims are recognized in part, but there are historical stipulations that require negotiation before occupation. The Concord law allows for arbitration, and as a neutral party, I am authorized to mediate. The Vorath representatives were visibly frustrated. No human had ever spoken with such authority in matters that were traditionally reserved for species of great age or military might. Ethan continued, outlining a plan that preserved Vorath claims while protecting neutral systems and establishing mutually beneficial trade agreements. He did not threaten, he did not coerce, he reasoned. And as the hours passed, the Vorath realized that agreeing to Ethan's terms would strengthen their position more than defiance ever could. After the meeting, Veilrix spoke softly. You are becoming more than a human representative. You are shaping the balance of power without firing a single shot. The galaxy will notice, and some will fear it. Ethan nodded. He understood that influence could provoke as much as it could protect, yet humans were uniquely suited to adapt. Where others relied on brute force or tradition, humans relied on thought, observation, and flexibility. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also the thrill of possibility. News from distant systems arrived shortly thereafter. The trade disputes Ethan had mediated had triggered a ripple effect. Several smaller empires and neutral colonies began approaching Earth and the conquered for advice and arbitration. Humans, once overlooked, had become a symbol of problem-solving and balanced judgment. Ethan recognized that with this new influence came a new set of challenges. He would need to act decisively and wisely to maintain trust and prevent envy from spiraling into hostility. One evening, as the twin suns set over the conquered, Ethan and Veilrix reviewed the latest intelligence. "The galaxy is changing," she said. "Humans are no longer observers. Your strategies, your reasoning, and your creativity are now critical. Some will welcome it, others will resist it. You must always be prepared." Ethan looked at the stars stretching infinitely above. He thought of Earth, a small blue planet now at the center of diplomatic attention, not because of military might but because of human adaptability. He realized that the galaxy's future depended not on dominance but on understanding and influence, and he was ready to act. The next week brought a significant challenge. An ancient species, the Krellari, long dormant in galactic affairs, suddenly appeared, claiming sovereignty over several key systems and threatening to destabilize entire trade networks. Their arrival was a shock. No one had expected them to awaken and assert authority so forcefully. Delegates scrambled to interpret their historical claims, and tensions rose. Ethan approached the matter strategically. He began by studying the Krellari archives, piecing together the lineage of claims, treaties, and territorial agreements. He identified contradictions in their historical records and clauses that had long been ignored. By using these overlooked details, he constructed a solution that acknowledged Krellari interests while preserving stability for other systems. The negotiation was intense. Krellari representatives demanded respect, authority, and compliance. Ethan responded with calm reasoning, referencing ancient laws and suggesting compromises that would satisfy their need for recognition without allowing them to disrupt peace. Hours turned into days, yet each solution he proposed was met with cautious approval. His human perspective, unbound by centuries of tradition, allowed him to propose ideas that other species could not consider. Eventually, an agreement was reached. The Krellari received recognition of historical claims and a share of trade benefits, while the conquered maintained control over critical systems. Conflict was avoided, not through force, but through intelligence, negotiation, and the human ability to navigate complex systems. The success strengthened humanity's standing further. Other species began consulting Ethan proactively, seeking human mediation in disputes that once would have required military intervention. Earth, through him, became an influential hub of diplomacy and problem-solving. The galaxy had begun to recognize that humans could wield influence through intellect, law, and adaptability, rather than weapons alone. During a quiet evening, Veilrix approached Ethan as he stood overlooking the city. "You have exceeded expectations," she said. "Humans have a potential that even we did not fully anticipate. You are teaching the galaxy that strength comes in many forms." Ethan reflected on the journey so far. From a small, overlooked human envoy to a pivotal figure in interstellar diplomacy, the transformation had been extraordinary. Humans had turned weakness into opportunity, invisibility into influence, and uncertainty into strategic advantage. He understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would continue to present challenges, and he would continue to adapt and respond. The following months were filled with initiatives. Ethan proposed new trade routes, mediated boundary disputes, and even suggested coordinated responses to emerging threats. Every action demonstrated that human ingenuity could solve problems that had baffled civilizations for centuries. Delegates who had once doubted humanity now recognized the species' unique ability to interpret, adapt, and implement solutions in ways that others could not. As the year progressed, a coalition of powerful empires attempted to undermine Ethan's authority, testing whether a human could truly hold sway in galactic politics. They introduced complex legal challenges and historical disputes, expecting to trap him in contradictions. But Ethan, drawing on his knowledge, observation, and creativity, responded with precision. He referenced overlooked clauses, proposed fair compromises, and highlighted mutually beneficial solutions. Each challenge was neutralized, each trap diffused. The coalition had underestimated the strength of human reasoning. Where brute force or tradition had failed, intelligence and adaptability succeeded. Humans, small and unassuming, had gained influence across the galaxy without firing a single shot. One evening, Veilrix spoke to him with a rare softness. "You have changed the perception of humanity. They are no longer underestimated, no longer dismissed. Your actions have demonstrated that humans can influence, protect, and even lead when circumstances require it." Ethan smiled, realizing that his journey had become something larger than himself. It was not just about survival or authority. It was about demonstrating the potential of an entire species. Humans had entered the galactic stage and were shaping its future through ingenuity, foresight, and resilience. As the twin suns set once more, Ethan looked out over the city of the conquered, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of possibility. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, yet humans had proven that they could navigate, influence, and thrive within it. He understood that every decision, every observation, and every creative solution had the power to shape civilizations. The galaxy would continue to evolve, conflicts would arise, and new challenges would test every species. But humanity, with its adaptability, creativity, and unbreakable spirit, had secured a place among the stars. And Ethan Hale, once an ordinary envoy, had become the embodiment of that potential. In the quiet moments, he reflected on the lesson he had learned. Strength was not always measured in fleets or weapons, but in thought, adaptability, and the courage to act when others could not. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and in doing so, had created a force more unpredictable and influential than anyone could have imagined. Ethan knew that the journey was far from over. The galaxy's future would require constant observation, negotiation, and innovation. But humans were ready. They had survived, adapted, and thrived against all odds. Now they would continue to influence the stars, one decision at a time, guided by intelligence, ingenuity, and the unshakable spirit that defined their species. As he turned from the balcony to the council chamber, Ethan felt a sense of clarity and purpose. The galaxy was alive with possibilities, and humanity was no longer a minor player. They were influential, respected, and essential. The stars stretched endlessly before him, and for the first time he understood the true scope of what humans could achieve. The future was not written, but with intelligence, creativity, and courage, they would shape it themselves. The galaxy would remember that humans, small and underestimated, had arrived, not as conquerors, but as thinkers, mediators, and architects of a new order among the stars. Galactic Contract Part 4. Ethan Hale had grown accustomed to the rhythm of galactic diplomacy, yet he knew each day brought new challenges. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, and even humans, adaptable as they were, could not rely solely on past experience. He walked through the corridors of the conquered, observing the activity with careful attention. Holographic projections of trade networks, territorial boundaries, and strategic alliances filled the air, moving and shifting like living constellations. Today, a new problem had arrived. A previously hidden coalition known as the Draven Circle had claimed jurisdiction over several border systems rich in resources. Their arrival threatened to destabilize delicate trade networks that Ethan had helped establish. The Draven Circle was known for aggressive negotiations and unorthodox tactics. For many species, such disputes would immediately become military confrontations. But Ethan had learned that intelligence and strategy could achieve results that force never could. He called a preliminary meeting with Veilrix. "The Draven Circle operates outside standard protocols," she said, her voice calm but tense. "They will challenge your authority and try to manipulate the laws. We must be careful." Ethan nodded. "I have been studying their history and precedents. There are clauses they must follow, even if they try to ignore them. We can use the system against them, not through force, but through clarity and strategy." The following day, the Draven Circle representatives arrived. Their forms were sleek and intimidating, their demeanor calculated and precise. They expected human weakness and assumed the new alliance between Ethan and Veilrix was fragile. But Ethan, standing at the center of the council chamber, exuded quiet confidence. "Your claims are noted," Ethan began, "but the Concord's laws require proper validation and consultation with neighboring systems before asserting jurisdiction. I am authorized to mediate and ensure compliance with these rules." The Draven Circle representatives were taken aback. They had anticipated confrontation, but Ethan's calm logic and command of the law created uncertainty. Hours passed as he navigated the complex web of historical records, treaties, and interstellar protocols. He identified overlooked clauses, subtle legal precedents, and negotiation pathways that allowed both sides to gain recognition without conflict. By evening, a tentative agreement was in place. The Draven Circle would receive acknowledgement of certain claims, while maintaining the balance of trade and territorial agreements. Conflict had been avoided without threats, battles, or coercion. Once again, humans demonstrated their strength through intellect, adaptability, and strategic insight. Over the next few weeks, word of Ethan's success spread. Other species and factions began to approach Earth for advice, mediation, and arbitration. Humans were no longer a minor presence. They had become essential partners in galactic governance. This newfound respect brought new responsibilities and pressures. Ethan understood that influence must be maintained, nurtured, and exercised wisely to prevent envy or fear from escalating into aggression. Veilrix observed his progress with quiet satisfaction. "You have shown that humans can operate at a level previously unimagined," she said. "Your adaptability and reasoning give Earth a presence and respect that no fleet could match." Ethan recognized that his journey was not just personal. It was the advancement of an entire species. Humans had entered the galactic stage, not through conquest or force, but through ingenuity and intellect. He had to ensure that every action reinforced this perception and strengthened Earth's position. Months passed with new challenges emerging. Disputes over newly discovered star systems, trade route negotiations, and interstellar treaties demanded constant attention. Ethan applied the same principles: observe, understand, interpret, and act decisively. Where others relied on tradition or intimidation, he relied on reason, foresight, and human creativity. Each successful resolution strengthened humanity's reputation and influence. A particularly critical moment came when the Solari Coalition, a powerful confederation, attempted to annex resource-rich planets without consulting the conquered. The situation threatened to ignite a series of skirmishes and trade disruptions. Ethan analyzed historical treaties and precedents, identifying clauses that required consultation and mutual agreement. Using these, he crafted a proposal that allowed the Solari to gain access to resources while ensuring other stakeholders retained sovereignty and economic benefit. The Solari representatives were initially skeptical, expecting rejection or resistance. But Ethan's calm logic, attention to detail, and creative solutions won their agreement. Conflict was avoided, trade stability preserved, and alliances strengthened. Humans, once dismissed as politically insignificant, were now recognized as critical mediators capable of shaping galactic outcomes. One evening, as Ethan reviewed reports in the Concord's library, he received an unexpected message. A distant civilization known as the Virans requested Earth's involvement in a long-standing conflict over interstellar communication networks. The Virans had been locked in legal disputes for generations, and the stagnation threatened technological progress for multiple systems. Ethan immediately began studying the case. He identified technical and legal nuances that had been overlooked, along with historical agreements that had been misinterpreted or ignored. Over several weeks, he proposed a solution that clarified communication rights, established shared management protocols, and created incentives for cooperation. The Virans accepted the arrangement, leading to unprecedented collaboration and technological advancement. This success reinforced the perception that humans were uniquely capable of seeing opportunities where others saw only obstacles. Human creativity, adaptability, and strategic thinking had become an invaluable resource across the galaxy. Ethan had transformed from a minor envoy to a symbol of his species' potential and influence. Veilrix spoke privately one evening. "The galaxy watches humans closely now," she said. Your successes are reshaping perceptions and alliances, but others will attempt to test your limits, challenge your authority, and provoke conflict. You must remain vigilant and adaptable. Ethan acknowledged her warning. He understood that influence was fragile and required constant effort, careful observation, and timely action. Humans had entered the galactic stage, but their continued success depended on persistence, creativity, and integrity. The months that followed saw humanity engaged in a variety of initiatives, coordinating multi-species trade networks, mediating border disputes, resolving legal ambiguities, and proposing innovative solutions to logistical and strategic challenges. Every successful initiative reinforced human influence, demonstrating that power could be achieved through intellect, adaptability, and foresight rather than brute force. Ethan found himself increasingly respected and consulted across the galaxy. Delegates who had once dismissed humans now actively sought their involvement in critical decisions. The perception of humanity had shifted from insignificance to indispensability, and Earth's standing had transformed from a minor planet to a central actor in interstellar governance. Throughout these challenges, Ethan reflected on the human qualities that made this possible. The ability to observe carefully, reason effectively, adapt quickly, and act decisively. These traits, often overlooked by more rigid or tradition-bound species, allowed humans to navigate complex systems and influence outcomes without aggression or coercion. In quiet moments, Ethan considered the broader implications. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but humans had proven that they could adapt and thrive, even in environments where they were once considered insignificant. The journey had begun with a single declaration, a legal binding with Lady Veilrix, and had expanded into a demonstration of humanity's potential on a cosmic scale. As Ethan gazed out over the conquered cityscape, the stars stretching endlessly above, he felt a deep sense of purpose. Humans were no longer observers, they were participants, innovators, and influencers. They had turned legal authority, creativity, and adaptability into tools that could shape civilizations. The galaxy had underestimated them, but that underestimation had become humanity's greatest advantage. Ethan understood that challenges would continue to arise, new conflicts would test resolve, and unforeseen obstacles would demand innovative solutions. But he also knew that humans were prepared. They had survived, adapted, and thrived against overwhelming odds, and they would continue to do so. Their influence, now recognized and respected, would grow, guided by intelligence, foresight, and an unyielding spirit. He turned from the balcony and walked toward the council chamber, ready to face the next challenge. The galaxy was alive with possibilities, and humans were an essential part of its unfolding story. Every decision, every negotiation, and every creative solution would continue to shape the future of civilizations. Ethan knew that the journey of humanity among the stars had only begun. The galaxy would continue to test, challenge, and evolve, but humans, with their adaptability, ingenuity, and perseverance, were ready. They had arrived not as conquerors, but as thinkers, mediators, and architects of a new order. And Ethan Hale, once a simple envoy, remained at the forefront, guiding his species through a vast, complex, and ever-changing universe. As night fell over the conquered, Ethan reflected on the lessons of the past months. Strength was not measured in fleets or weapons, but in observation, intelligence, and action. Influence came from understanding, foresight, and the courage to make decisions that others could not. Humanity had proven itself capable, respected, and essential. The stars stretched endlessly, and the galaxy, vast and unpredictable, was now a stage upon which humans would continue to thrive, adapt, and shape their destiny.